Can you talk me through exactly where your money comes from and like what monetization streams work the best for you?
So it's mostly the podcast and it is those sponsorship roles. So people can sponsor a segment. I've also got my title sponsor, Kiwi Bank. Love them for that. So they are over the entire podcast, which is great. But I also have section sponsors where we're talking about certain topics, and that is sponsored by certain companies, So I talk mostly about investing, property, career, budgeting and savings, and all of those are sort of split out. And so that works really well. I'm taking YouTube more seriously now. You have to, that's
Mm.
massive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that is something I don't think that'll ever be a huge earner, but it is, there's ads on there, so that's great. And then social media, there is the option for increasing the push for those section sponsors across my social media as well. So, but it all really comes down to the podcast. The podcast is the heart of it all.
Mm. What are your main tips for independent podcasters when it comes to making money?
Know exactly what it is that you offer and what is your point of difference. So I don't just talk about money. I talk about money in a very simple way and in a non-judgmental way. So it is a really warm, inviting, we might be talking about all sorts of complex things, but it's not going to feel complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to talk about how it relates to your life, and you are not going to get told off for buying a coffee. you know and so that's me. There are other people that talk about things in different ways. There are now far more personal finance podcasts in New Zealand, which is brilliant. There are people who will smack you around the head and tell you to pull your socks up. And some people want that, but that will never be me, And there are other people who focus entirely on investing. There are other people who focus entirely on budgeting. But I know what I offer, and that is that broad overview of money that isn't too complicated and that you're not going to feel judged for. And that's me.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I go and think about who I want to work with, and it's been a mix. I have been approached by some companies, and I have also proactively gone out and talked to some other companies and said, hey, I think you'd be a great fit for this. Shall we chat? When I know exactly who I am and who I'm talking to, that makes it really easy for me to then be like, okay, who's a fit and who's not?
Mm-hmm.
I work with Kiwi Bank. They are the little battler. They are the New Zealand bank, not the big Aussie competitors. They are also very committed to supporting independent media or up and comers. They like being part of the Kiwi battler story. So A, great fit in terms of they're across podcasts, know what they are, and are happy to be involved. But B, they also really fit my audience in terms of doing things a bit differently and being interested in different ways to make life good, and being really interested in that New Zealanders' stories. So that really worked and really made a lot of sense to me. Whereas, like I say, if I was going to look at something like a crypto exchange, technically, they're in the money world. They're great. I have no problem with crypto exchanges. I just don't think it would fit and it wouldn't feel right to my audience. So I've never had that conversation. And so I think, yeah, once you're really clear on who you are and what you offer, that makes it a lot easier to be like, okay, who should I be approaching? Who should I be open to approaching me? And also, are there any areas of my podcast which I could change a bit in order to bring in a sponsor that could work along this sort of way? I think of the Between Two Beers guys working with Zero and having that little segment where they answer audience questions about business. Brilliant. I'm sure that was just, I haven't talked to them about that. This is me putting words in their mouth, but I'm sure that was designed specifically to include that sponsor, but it's offering genuine value that works. Brilliant. And it's because they know who they are and who they're speaking to, and it works.
One of the biggest questions that I am getting from clients is about like how do you structure, like when you're doing a pitch or proposal for sponsors, how do you structure different packages and what should people be asking for in terms of money? Do you have any tips on how people can work through and navigate those decisions?
Talk to as many other podcasters as you can. I have found other podcasters really generous in terms of talking to me about what they're doing with their pricing and what sort of packages they are offering. But there's also so much information just on the internet. It's not all New Zealand focused, so be really careful to sort of vet that. But it can also be useful to see what's happening overseas and does that apply here. So you're going to have to do as much research as you can and hit the old Googles, hit up as many people as you can, gather all of that information. And then after that, you're just going to have to go for it, which is like, I think really freaks people out. But I always start with, I'm going to ask for the moon, and then maybe they'll knock me back down. But I'm going to start here because nobody's going to try and negotiate me up, are they? So I'm going to start high and see if it ends up me getting knocked back down. But so far, actually, I've asked for the moon and people have said, okay, as long as you deliver. Then you better make sure you deliver.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.